Hello, Adam. Hello, Dene.
Good morning.
So
How's everybody?
what I have behind me here, Dene, is not the black wall. That is outside.
It's beautiful.
Not so much morning on this side of the planet.
It's beautiful. Let me shut the door here. And there's my friend Rob Swaggart. He's coming to see me tomorrow. He's coming to see me tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic. And I'm coming to see you second week of January, it looks like.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
What's
it
the
will be
date?
good.
You're coming in tomorrow. He's flying in the week of the 15th for the onboarding.
Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't
the floor.
booked yet.
We have a week
after,
of onboarding.
after the 11th, I can come.
He's coming in. He's also going to Menlo Park. I think you're going up to, yeah, he's going to be in your neck of the woods after visiting me, I think.
Yes,
You
I'm
are?
going to go see. Yes, I'm going to California.
Ah, need a place to stay?
Oh, that's wonderful. But I usually stay in Berkeley, so I should be okay.
Okay.
Where are you? Where are you?
Menlo Park, Stanford.
Oh, just a touch more central. Just a touch.
Closer to SRI.
Yes, absolutely. Right near Atherton, even.
Yep, right next door.
Hey.
I'll be right back. I'm going to put my other camera.
So I just wanted to show you that Emily and Edgar are here. We're in Norway now. Quick wave, please, guys. So they're going to try
Edgar,
to be quiet.
happy holidays.
Oh, he can't hear you. I'm headphoning.
What hotel are you staying? What hotel are you at?
Oh, now?
Hmm?
Oh, this is our home in
That's
Norway.
your mother's house?
No, this is our house. A
Okay.
family summer house, so to speak, that we share for summers, and quite clearly it's summer right now. So you know how it is. Freezing summer. Well,
You're
it's summer in
Bergen.
Australia.
Bergen, right?
Yes, Fabien. So yeah, if there's too much.
I still have some writing to do today, but I still quickly wanted to drop in to congratulate you two. It's really awesome.
Thank you. We are quite happy.
You know what I said to him when I talked to him? I said, "Oh, ye so little faith." He said, "Oh, we're not going to get this grant." I said, "Yes, we are. We're going to get this. I mean, all the signs are there. We're not going to get this grant. Yes, we are."
And you did.
Faith.
Okay, now what's going on?
That was, you mean the beeping? That was my wife trying to find her phone. Everybody heard it around the world. The lost phone beep heard around the world. Sorry, it's just that it's nice to have a summer house access, and Fabien was almost going to be here this week. But the problem is the internet is really expensive, so I'm using my phone for internet. So if I sit at the back of the house, then I get no internet. That's why I have to share with the family today. Otherwise, it's an insane amount of money, and we're not so often here. So I apologize for the family engagement system. But yeah, no, it's nice. And it's been really interesting. A lot of the private messages I've received after making the announcement, some of the emails have been really, really sweet. I'll pause for a second. So yeah, there are some people who are now kind of institutionally able to engage with us in different ways. So that's very good. Essentially, as Dene said, what we have been given is more clout. So one of the key things, Adam was very good last week when we had an impromptu call, is asking, what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? Thank you for being very insistent, Adam. And for those of you who weren't there, the analogy that we have is we have a flagpole now, and you decide where you want to put your flag. So we have to decide what the community will be, also how we will invite new people. You saw I sent a thank you email today. Sorry, it's been a little much emails lately, of course. And that's what I'm trying to highlight there. One second, I have to ask Edgar to be quiet.
Can I mention something while he's being quiet? Is that we want to, one of the things we promised the Sloan Foundation is that we would expand this community and make it more diverse. They're very keen on that. If we're going to be building this kind of system for XR, although XR is pretty expensive, the equipment, it still means open source, open web. And so how can we bring in more people to help us think through these things? This is not just us that are going to be using this eventually. At some point, everybody's going to be using this. There was an article in CNN today about Apple Company and Tim Rice and him putting himself on the line with the Vision Pro. So I encourage you to look at it. I'll pull it up and drop it into the Slack channel. But essentially, he says some things about the use of this technology that I think is worth looking at. So, but we want to expand. So we want more people to come and join us on these Monday
That was an
mornings.
interesting Freudian slip there. You said Tim Rice.
I did, didn't I?
That was quite lovely.
Look.
You also mentioned Slack channel. Do we have a Slack channel now, or?
We will have a Slack channel. Yes, all these things we kick off in January. So this week is my last week of school. Exams are this week. I'm leaving for New York on Thursday. I get back Sunday. Monday morning, the lab hits the ground running on setting up the systems so that when January hits, we're ready to go. So we'll be setting up Slack, Basecamp, and all kinds of things for us to use.
But to come back to your the point you just made, I think that's a really important thing, especially considering how this group consists mostly of who are talking about, hey, how do I put this mildly? This group could benefit from more students, I think, because most people approach this from a perspective of how can we use this for business, or at least, you know, career stage-wise postdoc or professor stage. And the first headset that comes to mind is of course the Vision Pro, because it will be most advanced, but also ridiculously expensive. So one reason for me not to use Apple systems is because they're damn expensive. As a student, that's just not possible. Well, depending on priorities and circumstances and everything, right? But one reason for me at least. Yeah, so I thought introducing some more students and also, you know, bachelor students and their mindset and their use cases would be very beneficial for the group.
So we are, yeah, of course.
Can I respond to that quickly? So the lab it's an interesting project for my lab, because we do a lot of preservation work and art-based stuff, right? And so the question is, how does this fit? Well, one of the big tenets of my lab is accessibility. How do we make things last over time for as many people as we possibly can make it? So that's the kind of the grounding of what we do. So the preservation work is not, oh, we just want to preserve things. It's how do we make this accessible to audiences in 100 years? You know, what technologies will last, will persist over the next decades? And so, you know, this project is interesting because it's using WebXR, so open, right? Although it's using a very expensive headset, but we're moving away from proprietary software like Unreal Engine and Unity, which is great because I don't like proprietary systems. On the other hand, we're also interested in how to work with people that are disabled, neurodivergent. How do we make these technologies work for their needs so that it's not, we're not building them saying, oh, if you're hearing impaired, you need to flip the switch. It's like, no, it's built from ground up. Everybody, we don't have to make any special changes to these things to make it work, right? And then the third one is that how do we make this available to people who don't normally have access to these things? And it's not just people of color, it could be anybody. And I live in a blue collar working class community. My students are not elite families, but they're elite thinkers. So how do we get them to have access to these things so that they can use these tools to build and create and move forward in their generations to come, right? So I'm interested in this project from a lot of standpoints. And of course, the other thing is that I could see using this for art. There's all kinds of things we can do with text in a VR environment for art. But those are kind of sitting there. And I think that's one of the things that we heard back from the evaluators, that they liked our DEI. And for me, it's not about DEI, it's about accessibility. It's about being kind. And this is what we talked about a week ago or so, right? Just being kind to everybody, making sure everybody has access. So yeah, Michael, students, and my lab is full of students, undergrads and recent grads, as Rob knows. And they're smart, they're whip smart. I'll stop there, Frode.
Okay, so I'm going to say the same but opposite. The reason I'm excited about the Apple headset is because it's expensive. Because we need to be a few years in the future. You know, Alan Kay said, why don't you spend as much money on your computer as you do in your car? To a professional, not a student, trust me. I've been both a young and not so young student, so I know that telling you to invest when you're a student is pretty ridiculous, but you know, that's why this is exciting. You know, we do expect in a few years that this will be, you know, like a cheap iPhone type of thing, and a lot of students will have it, and we need to live in that future now to make that possible. Now, a couple of other things. First thing is we did for book one have a competition for students, and that was okay. And now we're going to have more of a competition for students. So we need to, over time in community, define what that is. We need to decide on, yeah, it's basically going to be for the book. Excuse me. That we want to make it clear. It doesn't have to be like a master's dissertation. It can even be a photograph of a paper mache toy if you want to do, if a student wants to do prototyping. The only requirement is passion. It has to be an honest passion. So we're not going to have a cash prize. I veto that because then you will get parents involved who will push their kids because it has a certain kind of a cachet or whatever, and you're going to get a lot of rubbish. So it has, you know, the main thing, like the first one, we had the prize was an hour meeting with Vint online, several signed books from the other authors who were part of that book, that kind of stuff. So we will absolutely, in January, have a proper meeting on how to reach these students. That's important. And then there's another thing, which is going straight into brass tacks, as they call it. And so, Peter, you were the one who a long time ago said that visual meta is great, you should be able to throw it away, meaning temporary visual meta appendices. And that's become more and more important. So I'm reminding everyone of that now, but also how important it is specifically for me to credit people. I like to invent myself. I like to take credit where it is due, no question. I'm an artist, but I have a teacher heart. I think it's more exciting we're in a community where we can properly say, oh my God, what you thought of there, I have never thought of it, you're brilliant. So Peter, you're a fantastic example of coming in, looking at something and changing it. And then there's one other thing that is really relevant. And I thought it was either Leon or Fabien. And yes, I can tell you apart. But there was one thing that I discussed with one of you, and it turns out it's probably Leon. And that is the notion of having, of where, I know it sounds like details, but this is not a detail, this is so important, of where the documents are going to be. And somebody said that the software on your PC, Mac, whatever, could be a server. Was for streaming. Was that you, Mr. Leon?
I'm afraid that was Fabien, or my brain is as bad as yours. I don't know.
I think it was probably both of you in conversations, but let's not go back to our record, you know, and distort everything.
I said that.
Was
I
it
said
you,
that
Adam?
Yeah. We talked about this last meeting.
Okay, you're here so okay. Now you should feel really bad, Adam. You're here so rarely that I completely forgot it was you. Right. So let me tell you why all of you, obviously not you, Adam, and thank you. Why that is so
Rarely.
important.
I've been here for 45, 50 meetings
No, I
out of
know,
the 300. So
I know. I'm just saying it's nice that you have an opportunity now to be here live because of your obligations on Mondays, and we'll probably change the time, but there we go. So this is really important because hang on. Okay, sorry, work message. Right. But here's the thing. There has been a lot of arguments within this community, PDF, not PDF, all of that stuff. And Adam solved it in one fell swoop. So this is what I propose we do. If someone wants to read a document, we probably have to take the document into XR. But one thing that it seems to me we agree on is dealing with the library in XR is going to be a primary feature because you can have lots and lots of documents, right? So I don't mind serving from, let's say, my software reader to XR JSON files or something. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So that means that whatever the heck is best for XR, there should be a server that can provide that. Why should we make the XR do the heavy lifting? So having really thought about this week, I think that, and I'm glad Fabien's got his hand up and Leon, that we can ask you guys, what is the absolute best way to get this data into XR? And then we do the host software, do the heavy lifting to provide that. It seems reasonable, right? Okay, Fabien.
Is Reader open source and is it multi-platform?
Reader is entirely owned by me. It's one platform, ha ha ha. But you should see that as a benefit because
I
that,
can't work on it, to be very direct.
No,
I don't have a Mac, so I can work on it.
No, but hang on, Fabien.
I can't touch it.
Fabien, I'm still answering your question. You should still see that as a benefit because the idea is, in my experience, that if you have client server systems of any kind, if you have the same team working on both, they tend to cheat without even realizing it, of how things communicate. The people doing my commercial reader stuff, and I'm saying commercial, it's not even that commercial, it's free, and I don't mind giving it up. That's not a problem. But the idea is that the protocol through which it communicates with what you do in XR, that's what you decide on. Someone else implements it to make sure things do go through the API, and it goes in a way that these other people understand. Of course, we need to support other platforms. We need to figure out a way to do this for Linux. We need to do it for Windows, no question. But I think in the sense of a case study, having a locked-in little thing on the Mac is not necessarily a bad idea. Now, let me make it clear. If it turns out it is a bad idea, I'm happy to open source Reader. I'm not against that at all. But I don't think that's initially useful. Think of me as someone outside of the community, technically speaking. Think of the fact that my programmers have to be given the right documentation that anyone else would have. It's like they can test it. And okay, let's put it this way. Let's work on that for a year. And then in a year, when we're done with this, we have a discussion. If you guys feel I should open source and open up Reader, I'll do so. I just think it's a worthwhile, I'll repeat myself, sorry, testing. Leon, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to you just triggered some memories. Maybe Adam, Fabien, and I all said something in that direction of having the files on the laptop. What I suggested, I think, in the past, which was just a suggestion, based on your you had some kind of video where you would basically you have a text on your laptop, then you closed your laptop, and then you put on the headset. Do you remember that video? So I remember that after seeing that, I just had this brain fart of sort of shoehorning a tiny web server in a Reader or Author, doesn't matter, so that whatever you're doing whenever you're doing something, you can press on a button which triggers a QR code, which you can then sort of scan with your headset, and then immediately you have that document in XR because you're on the same Wi-Fi, so to speak. So that was one sort of like more or less frictionless idea to sort of transfer a sort of a WebXR application to the headset without needing any server infrastructure somewhere in the cloud, which might add some extra layers of complexity. So that's what I remember from what you told me what you just told me. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in this. And I see you, Adam. 1 second. All I'm saying is that my passion for visual meta is for a specific domain. It should not slow down the development of this at all, right? So if we can do some kind of a server way, if we can do stuff, basically we just need to optimize whatever the heck is best for WebXR. Adam, please.
Whoops. Is my mic on? I think going the web server route is one of the most cross-platform ways you can do things now, and I think having a web server could be one of the best way to preserve this as well for the long term. So having a small web serving doing, I don't know how much of heavy lifting it is to run the library, but it's some lifting at least. And that could be integrated into Reader, but also run standalone without Reader and on PC or Linux or anything. I think that's the most viable path forward. In a way, we need the web server anyway to serve WebXR content.
Yeah, perfect, Adam. Alan and Brandel are here, so I'm going to repeat what you said and everyone said, and that is lots of nice talk. You have to rewind to watch the recording later. But anyway, there has been some talk in the community by Leon, Fabien, and maybe Adam. I'm just kidding. It turned out it was Adam, saying that maybe a good way to get information into XR libraries and documents is by having a web server. And that web server could be in the client software. And I think that my passion for visual meta should not slow things down. It has many attributes in many places that are good, but to import a PDF into an XR environment and having it OCR'd or whatever to get the data out is, of course, plain silly. I just want to make it clear that, that's understood. So one approach we may want to do is on different platforms, we have a basic reader-like software. And that then speaks with JSON or whatever you guys think makes most sense to a WebXR client, so that at least the library information from thousands of documents can be relatively instantly available in that environment. I saw you nodding your heads, which is nice. And Fabien is going to come with a rebuttal.
No. Yes, all this makes sense. I agree with it. I'm just, again, saying that I can't touch anything that's not open source. So indeed, having a protocol and a format that allows to have any number of implementation, being closed source or not, does make sense. And I agree that in terms of ensuring the quality of the work, that's also a good practice. So that's not a problem. I also want to highlight a little bit that I've been using the word WebDAV quite a few times now. It's old school stuff, but I think in terms of managing a collection of documents via the web, so having a web server, being in Reader or in any other implementation, it's a little bit annoying to set up, but once it's set, and it's not like complex, basically, there were basically turnkey solution for this, allows to both read and write documents. So you can imagine reading a document, annotating it or changing the document itself, no sidecar files, and pushing it back, or listing a set of documents in a directory or subdirectories, etc. So I don't have any love for WebDAV. It's not necessarily the best solution, but in terms of a lot of the things I hear again and again, I think it would already go quite a long way. And that's also why I did this demo during demo day. How was it, like 6 months ago, a little while ago? It was, as per usual, aesthetically boring and ugly, but the list of things were basically documents through WebDAV. So I think that might be a way. We might kickstart the process through just, let's say, a JSON list of files and re-uploading through a form and whatnot. I think that would be reinventing the wheel quite a bit. So yeah, just an example of what might be a way to bootstrap and go relatively fast on those.
Yeah, yes, WebDAV or some other technology that seems to make sense. Now, I'm just going to show you guys something. Hiding all my secret chats with the coders, making you a bit smaller. So I'm just going to talk you through this. You can see the screen, right? I can only see Fabien, so can you nod? Okay, good. Right, so this is some of this is possible now as a slideshow, so I'll just go through it. So open a document like you can now, run a prompt. In this case, it's the one of extract names. This is what Leon and I were experimenting with last week. So it does all its magic thinking, comes back with a list. Now, first of all, this list is now editable. So if there are any names in this document that are either wrong or unreasonable or not necessary, you just delete them at this point. So this is how it works now. So this is not needing implementation, but what I think we should do, add a button at the bottom there that says save metadata. And that does the Peter thing of adding another, you can see it mocked up here, another visual meta appendix with only that. And at the bottom of it, it says what the prompt was and all kinds of stuff, right? So the way that I've been using this in testing is basically, actually, there was another thing. I'm sorry, I was a bit quick there. Can you still see my screen? No, okay. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. So then we can do things like this. So the user has their specific names or keywords on the left that they've added through whatever means. They click on one, and then whatever documents have that in their name metadata are highlighted. This is obviously the crudest possible way of doing it in a list on a small screen. But I wanted to show you that because we've been talking quite a bit in the community about how to get AI to be usefully part of this. And to make it just a find engine that's a little clever might be one of the ideas. So once you have this metadata in the document, it is something that the software that created it knows how to extract. So that's why I'm saying it could now quite easily be made available through a web server. So that was basically that. Do we all, it seems like we all quite instantly agreed with trying the web server approach. Leon?
I think that's a really cool idea because then you basically offload the headset with some heavy work, because, for example, these OpenAI web requests, etc., if that could happen on somebody's laptop, then the frame rate of the it's easier to maintain a very fast frame rate on the headset, and perhaps you can just sort of cast, just like a Chromecast, you can cast these kind of AI find results to your perhaps your space. Of course, you can have the document there, but having these, yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. Actually, I think it can save a lot of performance tweaking. And just to give you an example, usually when you do a lot of web requests within a WebXR session, then sometimes it can be it can cause some hiccups, and I think you know, since you are a big fan of elegant experiences and etc., that could be a nice reason to sort of offload and yeah, purely use the headset for fast rendering and a nice experience.
Yeah, one of the key things with this approach, of course, is that all the documents would have whatever the user wants. Maybe they want to extract dates or whatever suits them. And because it is editable results, if there's nonsense, they go through it. And this is not intended for a million documents in a field. This is their library. These are the things they care about. Because then hopefully we can get to a stage where we can have 100,000 keywords on your walls, and they will make sense, like Brandel showed us a year and a half ago. Fabien and then Brandel.
Yeah, I don't remember what prompted my thought earlier today, but yeah, I think it. So I changed. I'll retrace my step. You can see my alert turn on and off again. I switched from an IoT platform called WebThings, or the implementation from Mozilla of WebThings. So it's to control physical devices, and I have example, so sensors like this, motion sensor, so I can track my family, but in privacy respecting way, or whatever other usage, or bind the family tree Christmas light when whatever is happening, which is completely pointless, thus absolutely necessary. I just for having fun, really. But the point is, I switched from the Mozilla WebThings to the standard pretty much called Home Assistant. And what Home Assistant does, just like WebThings from Mozilla did, is provide a set of URLs. So basically a web API. So it means my light bulb literally has a URL, and I can contact my light bulb by sending the right message. Let's say turn off, turn on, change colors. I have shortcuts for all this. All that convoluted explanation to say that I tend to think as everything as a URL, and that you basically have to do some routing. You need to define the right path, something that is understandable, manageable, let's say intellectually speaking and programmatically speaking. And I think providing documents or set of documents, URLs, and making sure that how they're processed, for example, using summarization from whatever services, however it's done, doesn't really matter. But providing URLs and providing ways to make them addressable and thus manipulable, I mean, makes a lot of sense to me. And I don't know if it's a healthy obsession to see anything as an addressable endpoint or URL on API. But I mean, so far, it's going more that way than the other way around. Like I'm trying to make anything I have around me, including, so I give the light bulb example, tangible things, not just, let's say, documents. And that also means like a physical switch, or rather an integer switch, in order to turn on and off devices that are otherwise, let's say, not compatible with it. So like, how do you say, addressably, or making the real world addressable is a continuation of this. So I think it's, yeah, again, makes sense.
There was a lot baked into that, or packed into that rather. Okay, interesting. I mean, addressability is key. You can't address something that's not addressable and therefore interact with it. But you're obviously going quite a bit further. Right. So just to ask a few specific questions. Should we do WebDAV? And if could you put a reference to Fabien to that in the chat? I'm a little behind on the chat. I've been watching you guys. If we're going to have the experience that I did in that little mock-up video of working on something on the computer, closing the lid, and it's now the headset, the computer will then not be online. So that's something to really consider, because the lid will be closed.
Can you say that again, please? I didn't catch it.
In the little video that Emily filmed me at the coffee shop where I'm working on the computer, then I close the lid and the information goes into AR space. Because I'm closing the computer, it means it's no longer online. So we can't necessarily easily use a WebDAV in the software. We may still need a web host.
So the headset itself can also be a web host. Huh? That's what I do when I'm, let's say, flying or being offline and I want just the headset. So it's also an option. You keep the data synced, for example, but the headset itself can become a host and serve files to other devices.
Right, okay. What was that? What was that you, Peter? I didn't hear.
Oh, I wanted to call everyone's attention to the sidebar where I just dropped references to a group called X Reality, which has an accompanying
Peter, sorry, can we hold with that for a bit? Sorry.
Oh, sure.
I thought you were referring to something to do with the serving thing. Sorry, sorry.
Okay, sorry, I was off to a different topic.
Yeah, sorry, misunderstanding.
So, my understanding is you can keep a Mac working. I mean, you can keep many laptops working when they close their lid, Mac included, I believe. Particularly if you have an external display plugged in, be it real or virtual. So, you know, I use my Mac plugged into external displays because I despise the ergonomic of laptops. So it should be possible to come to some kind of arrangement like that. It may be necessary to use some kind of explicit virtual projection system, but it may also not. You know, if the Mac sort of remains as a web server, then that should be possible to wrangle like that too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's how I use my Mac too. So I have a dream of this. Let me see if you agree with this particular dream. And that is literally that little video. I'm working on something, probably my laptop, because I'm away somewhere. And oh, I need to do this bigger thing. But I need to close the laptop because otherwise it's in my way. That's how it is in a public location. I don't have anywhere really to put it away. Close it, put my headset on. So whatever the last few things I did on my laptop has to either be quickly synced with the headset or there need to be a stable connection, but there won't be a display plugged in as such, I think. Do we all agree that that is a useful thing, or is it more a matter of having a PC plugged in the corner at home? Oh, Fabien, give me a thumb. Okay, there are some feelings on that. Fabien, please go ahead.
So I went on a holiday 9 months ago in the middle of literally nowhere in Belgium, and I take all my device, but I dropped the internet connection as a mental and actual exercise. And the point was to explore this kind of topic. I put in the chat a specific issue in my repository on, I believe that's exactly what you were talking about. Namely, you work on a device, you switch to another, one is becoming inaccessible basically, and you still need to keep on working. So that's what this specific issue is about. One trick, let's say, if you use WebDAV or whatever, it doesn't really matter, is you try to sync the data whenever you're saving, committing, doing whatever you want. And if your system, your file system or whatever is properly distributed, it should come for free. In the case of, manageable sized documents on a working network, that's okay. When you start to have things like, oh, I want to run an LLM that needs a specific hardware and everything, it becomes tricky and you might have to do some caching or say, okay, this service is not accessible. But I think it is a proper question, but there are some solutions for it. It doesn't, the issue there is an example. I personally, for example, did not implement it right now in the solution I have, because in most cases I did find a pragmatic solution, like regaining a connection or plugging back the device or postponing the work. But yeah, I think it's a valid question with existing solutions, so we can tackle that.
It would be amazing to have something decided today, because I really don't want to spend so much time figuring out the plumbing. You know, we need to get the data into the XR environment and spend a year working on just XR interactions. So I'm really grateful for the perspectives here today. Leon.
Yeah, I would like to be careful with like this sort of like pushing for a storage solution at this early point in time could really sort of it feels a bit yeah, maybe I said enough.
Not storage, transmission. The feeling, okay, so I feel that visual meta is still important because it's very, very stable, if nothing else. So the idea is that someone will have a library somewhere on their PC, Mac, whatever, and they will have some sort of metadata. It may not be the way we're doing it, but some sort of metadata. And the key thing has to be, when they put their headset on, that metadata needs to be there. The data too, but I think we may, and I'm looking at Dene here particularly, I think we may slightly reverse a little bit and say that, yes, we do need to get a PDF in there. We do need to make it readable. But for the real interactions, it's probably going to be with the metadata of the PDF rather than the PDF itself. So that's why for, you know, like Peter sitting in front of a virtual library there, and we've talked about library, just imagine a couple of thousand PDFs that over time a student or an academic has gone through. They've done the sort of thing you just saw, extracted the kind of things that are relevant to them. If you do that on a 13-inch or 27-inch screen, it's nonsense. But to do that room scale, it becomes really easy to make shapes out of this. But how we do that, how we hide and show things and how we cluster things, that's going to require a ton of work. So I hope we can spend most of our effort on that. Yes. Oh, Leon, yes.
Yeah, I do agree, but yeah, I would suggest to sort of let that you know, if it's so important, then why try to limit ourselves to a particular idea we have right now at the journey at the beginning? Why not just focus on the accessibility stuff, like focusing on the how it will look in XR, and imagining that we can just you know, imagine that it was that visual meta was transferred through a web server, etc. But we don't perhaps really need that right now. If we focus on the top down, let's say, how does the WebXR client, even without communication from a MacBook, then yeah, perhaps then we can slowly sort of think like, hey, do we need to send a PDF and the visual meta in one go or over two channels? Like, I think these kind of things will probably sort of show itself what they want.
Okay, good points. First of all, I do not have a problem with the document and the metadata coming separately. I don't mind if you are, first of all, I do think that the library should be there instantly, pretty much. And in terms of working on the interactions and not the data transmission, I don't agree with you there with the priority, because I strongly feel that it has to be real data. Because if it's not real data, I mean, having spent years and wasted massive amount of money in both author and reader, trying to come up with ideas, it's only when I'm actually working and it's actual knowledge for me, I can know whether a view is useful or just a demo. So that's really important. So that's why I think that we can work on different ways to do the reading. To send a PDF in, we're probably going to be doing different ways, even a horrible JPEG, lots of different ways. But the metadata, you know, if we just agree on a JSON format, for instance, that really suits WebXR, we just put a nail in it, hang it on the wall, say that's the way it's got to be. And then we figure out way to get that stuff to WebXR with the least amount of work from the user. Fabien.
I mean, it's kind of the biggest challenge, in my opinion. It's not even how we do it, but what matters. What should we focus on? And indeed, I think that's the hard question when Leon is asking this is, okay, having a properly resilient system that is fault tolerant and whatnot would be cool. And I agree with that. And it would be useful, but would it be genuinely new? Or without cheating our way, while still using real documents that provide a use case that either for our ideal user or for one of us or all of us, whatever, is generally useful? Can we take shortcuts, basically, because we have limited resources, being available brain time or even just energy, time itself? So I think that's the trick, and that's the trick. That's the challenge, and it's exactly like when you do, I mean, project management in general, but prototyping, when you do something genuinely new, and what are you focusing on? What's actually maybe feasible? And yeah, I don't honestly have an answer for this. I know that that's why I shared the issue before. I do find this kind of like resilient file system interesting, useful. Here, honestly, I would then also to focus on interaction, like how do we manipulate a set of document that itself has, it's not something that I've seen often, and it's something I'm genuinely curious about, and I think is important. So, like, yeah, what's the minimum we can live with without being ashamed of the underlying implementation to do the real work, in my opinion.
Have I told you guys lately how much I love you? This is exactly half of why it's good to have a community. You know, we can agree on things, and then some people will push further and some people will pull back. And I think that's exactly what we have to do now. I completely agree. So let's try to define where we can cut corners, because we will have to cut corners. Any company would have to. Number one thing that I'm not willing to give up on is actual real user data. It has to be that. But if I think maybe what we do, we split the entire project idea-wise into reading a document versus interacting with the library. They almost have nothing in common. Of course, they have some things in common, but they are very, very different. So I see Brandel's hand is up, which is great because, for instance, when Brandel took the map from author and put that in XR, the way that works is the JSON file that author already has made, it's dropped in. And if we have something, literally a message for the user saying, please note that your client software is robust, the XR experience may not be up to date. You know, we quite literally write it out for them. You know, we may say, if you're missing something, you have to reload. All of these things are fine because it's not commercial software, but there has to be an expectation that if they follow a few steps, they can put their headset on and it is their real library. Brandel, please.
Yeah, so thank you for reminding me about the way that map XR thing works. It's what I was going to say before I went to feed the cat as well, is that there's a video game called Quake from 1996 or so, and it's something that John Carmack did throughout his career for multiplayer games. Is that they're never actually single player games. They're always a client and a server, and so that and it's a pattern I followed there as well, and one I would recommend everywhere, is that you don't do any processing on the client per se, but actually just turn the server and the client into the same machine at the time when it's a single-use device, and make sure that you're always following sort of a networkable protocol across that gap in order to make those things happen. So the way that the XR map thing happens is that I ingest the reader document, the author document, and ingest the first the list of nodes and then the adjacency matrix. And so it's possible to be able to, one, load that kind of thing asynchronously and to be able to populate it as those things emerge. I didn't do that, but it's possible to do so. And second, to make sure that rather than acting on the local sort of processing of identifying these new nodes, actually having to make sure that they are processed by way of being sent as a message, as a signal through the system in that way, means that any other client that has the ability to respond to it can do so as well. You know, another thing to do to make it more robust is to have sort of ad hoc sort of tallying of network states, so that you can cache or buffer any set of commands that you know didn't get to any of the other ones. You can actually make serverless kinds of things like that by saying like, well, I know that, so I'm client A, this is client B, that's client C. I actually don't know, I know that client B didn't get messages 3 through 10, so I'm going to call a copy of them. So those kinds of things would allow you to create a peer-to-peer based thing where there's no distinction between client and server, but everybody must at least be a client and server. So those are sort of lower level approaches that you can use to make that kind of thing happen. But yeah, the ability to actually, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, are you saying that if in the scenario of someone in a coffee shop, they leave their laptop slightly open, this will be a much easier thing to do?
I mean, so yeah, the reality is that so you could have you could be connected to, like, the person in the cafe on their laptop could be, you know, doing one or two things. They could be working entirely locally, or they could be working primarily locally and just having something, even something very simple, being sent to a co-located server somewhere that happens to be remote. It's my belief that the laptop has the ability to maintain its entirety of its activity once you close the lid. But even if it isn't, and so then it would be possible for your head-mounted device to be able to hit just the laptop in the event that it's closed. But even if that's not the case, it would be possible to then hit that server as well. And architecturally, there will be no distinction between the servers and the client.
So if we then use, as you're saying, have a server on the headset and on the laptop, we could do something like the laptop saying, you're up to date. So then the headset can literally have a note that's saying, you can close the lid now if you want to, for the sake of argument, right? And then they work in the headset, and then they put it away, and then the laptop could say somewhere, your headset has sent everything back. You can put it away now, or whatever. These are the kinds of cheating I don't mind at all. You know, I certainly don't want to have to own some kind of a web server thing that is Amazon or WordPress that complicates it. Should we just say that devices have to be on during synchronization and then they resynchronize later? It's not that much to ask the user, right?
Well, so the issue is that synchronization is, I don't want to say trivially easy, but there's an incredible amount of infrastructure underpinning the speed and connectivity of the internet these days. But if you use a Google Doc, you know, those are synced per keystroke typically. And it's not that it requires, you know, the Google scale big iron in order to be able to do that. It just needs to do that for the number of Google Docs in flight at the moment. So if you're just dealing with, you know, your own set of, you know, single digit clients, single digits, with you know, tens of bytes per CRDT level kind of integration, then, you know, those things happen functionally for free now. It's really anticlimactic. So the glitch, you know, page that I made for the, you know, the various naked paste, the one that has the, like, it doesn't have a save button. And when every time you press Command S, it has this snarky little message saying, "Oh, it's automatically saved. You're obviously a very old person who's not used to this." Yeah, like it's one of those problems that kind of, with the right kind of infrastructure, on the right kind of network infrastructure, which is increasingly easy to achieve these days, it's simply dissolved as an issue.
Right. Okay, good. So am I right in saying that this community, we're happy to use WebDAV, at least as a test? May turn out it's awful when we do something else, but initially, so we need to find a way to get from whatever software to XR, I will invest in doing it from Reader. And you guys who are on the website will invest in telling me what to do. And once we've done that, we're kind of golden. One of the benefits I have with Reader is that, as you know, there's a function in Reader that when you highlight the document and you close and you go to the library, if you do a search, it will also search for highlighted text. That means that this highlighted text is stored in some sort of database. I don't actually know exactly what it is, but it means it's fully available to the Reader software, which means it should be trivial for my guys to take all of this other stuff, put it in there too, and then implement the WebDAV solution you guys think about. And I can see Adam's about to say something big, and just make it happen for you. Adam, please. You are muted though.
It was more a question of like procedure, or because Dene is also running this, and she has the team, and we brainstorm a lot here, and it's so it's a matter of what they want to do also. I guess. So it's a bit complicated here. Lots of people, and the people who's doing much of the work is not in this video right now. So we're kind of the community part here.
I can answer that even before Dene, and that is there are some things that are going to require specific knowledge and real work and testing, and that's going to be Dene's team. In so many communities I've been a part of, and I'm sure you've had similar experience, it's really easy to get stumbled on something early and then go on and overthink it. And my great mentor, Ed Leahy, in advertising, I remember we're doing a pitch for some giant thing. I was supposed to choose a background. I was a very lowly employee at the time over the summer. And I was trying to get the right this and the right that. And he said, do it. Just get it in there and then we can move on, right? When it comes to how to get the data in, I think it is actually for us. I'm not saying any one of you should have to do any coding or spend any money or anything like that. But unless Dene's team disagrees, of course, we will put this to them. Just getting the stuff there, and then they can really focus on, we all talk about the interactions in XR, and that's where we spend our money. Dene, was I right?
I put a couple of things while you're talking. So the person that's doing this programming is Andrew Thompson, and he met Frode at the Hypertext conference back in September. Andrew's been working in my lab now, I think it's been 3 years, and he does a variety of programming activities. And he's currently working on the VR project that we're building for Rob Swaggart. In fact, he's kind of leading that VR team for me. He's got a lot of experience in programming. A lot of these students in my program started as computer science people, but wanted to switch into my program because we offer a more creative outlet. And he's one of those kind of kiddos. He's able to do pretty much whatever we want him to do. And if he doesn't know it today, he'll learn it tomorrow, which is what we teach in our program, is how to think the system rather than teach a particular software system. So we start onboarding him on Monday to get the computer set up for him, software, all the tech set up. I'm ordering him a new computer, these kinds of things, so that he can hit the ground running in January before Frode shows up. The grant starts in January. There's no funding until the money transfers. So I can't pay Andrew until January. So I'm paying him through my lab right now to get him ready for the project. But once January hits and the funding's there, then he'll start full on this project. Monday, I get him kind of on the ground running, which is good. And he'll do, I think, whatever we're wanting to do. And he's happy to experiment. The nice thing about working with young people is that they really don't have boundaries. They're really just ready to try so many different things. And I like that about him especially.
So, Dene, in terms of, I'm afraid I haven't read your actual grant proposal in its entirety. So, what you're expecting this fellow to do? Oh yeah, hi Bob.
Hi Bob.
Hopefully you saw all of this. hopefully you saw all of the news that we're talking about some of the logistics of building the ability to process text in VR with some funding to do that. So Dene, in terms of the highest level goals and the people and resources, it's this Andrew Thompson who's going to be doing the bulk of the programming, and that the expectation is for them to take on the interaction.
We have two sources of programming money. One is for the web, and that's going to be Andrew. And then we have another 12,000 a year for XR, high level programming, and that's someone else. It doesn't have to be for my lab, but it can be. I have Aria Nicholas, for example, that can do that. But that I did not put in the grant as coming straight from my lab. They'll have to go through my lab to get paid. But I have right now about 8 people that are in the lab working for me that I fund, right, through different grants and donations and stuff like that. Andrew's been with me. He's one of those people who's been with me for quite a while. But I bring in people constantly. There's a flow based on projects. So right now I'm bringing in 2 young people to work with Dina Larson on the Rob Swaggart project that they're doing together. And they're running through my lab, funded through Dina's money to do that project. So I have a lot of those kind of people. They get paid through the lab. One thing I'll mention is that my university is going to be able to pay people through stipends and honoraria. So I'm not worried about the 12,000 a year person, because that's going to be straight funding. But Andrew is being paid as an employee because he's been an employee.
Yeah.
That makes sense, Brandel?
Yeah, no, that's great. So you have the sort of the wherewithal to be able to fund a range of people doing a range of different things.
And there's things Andrew, and there's probably things Andrew can't do that we want him to do. And that's where the extra money comes in.
Cool. So yeah, so just before I finish, I think one of the most useful things will be and having a web interface is going to be useful for this, is to be able to just submit and surface a fairly wide array of resources in terms of technical resources into a client process, such that a multiplicity of people and views have the ability to consume that in a range of ways. One of the things that Vision Pro has, for example, is voice input and output in WebXR, so that you can do speech. That doesn't exist in Quest today. Much to my frustration, I keep saying, like, please do voice. They're like, we can't afford it, whatever. So that would be a useful thing if somebody wanted to have their own sort of original research or some kind of function within the context of documents, information, WebXR, and voice. Whereas other people may be wanting to invest more heavily in gesture and action. So if there's that breadth of being able to attach multiple people to the project, I think that also invites value in making sure that there's a range of ways that they can interface with it.
Exactly, and the kind of complication of the opportunity that we have $1,000 a month on to be able to spend where it best goes is a complication I was actually not going to bring up too early, because it may complicate things. And we are trying today to work out what that would mean. And the thing is, if we now manage to relatively quickly establish this WebDAV protocol with metadata, it means that, let's say Adam, for instance, he decides to make his own Mac client. He decides to do all kinds of things, and he wants to keep it on his own name, and just show it at the end of the year. That's fine. If Adam, as an example, also says, hey, here's an aspect for something, I would like to spend some significant time. Can you pay me for the time? Then we'll have to decide, and of course, if we can, we will. We will pay for that time for whoever. That is why we wrote in the XR specialist. It was just a title to cover the opportunities here, because I don't want anyone in this community to be out of pocket on this. I've been out of pocket for 12 years doing this. It's not fun. I don't want you guys to have to do that. But at the same time, there is quite a few of us. To spread that money equally around every month doesn't make any sense. And both Dene and me, we also get incredibly small salaries out of this. So it's not that we could afford from that to pay for things either. But an alternative to this is also, let's say, to use Adam as an example again, he has spent some significant time doing something and he needs a piece of equipment to get to the next level. You know, it's quite easy for us to consider, yes, that is a legitimate expense for the community. So right now we don't know, and this is why I used that analogy last time for those of you who were there. It's like this is a must, and you guys get to decide in dialogue with us where you want to hoist your flag. You want a big flag pulling us in the same direction? Do you want a smaller flag that's just an article in the book pulling in a different direction? It really is entirely up to you, as long as we keep, as we have been, a really pleasant, positive dialogue going. Peter. Oh, actually, Brandel, does that address your? Sorry, I just wanted to ask Brandel, does that address your question?
Yeah. I think given that there is a project with people that sort of actually hard allocated to it, my main question was like, how many people, what kind of people, and what are the explicit sort of goals as they are established already for it? And it sounds like, because when we're saying like Andrew Thompson, then a lot would depend on both that person's skill level in a range of fields, as well as any explicit goals that are associated with their employment, frankly, in terms of what it is that we can do to make the project and the person's sort of skills and balance sort of all be set up for success. But if it's actually that there is a range of, one has the ability to set up a number of people to kind of work with this, then there's a core infrastructural sort of aspect of it, and then there are these subsequent kind of front-end things. And so to that end, I think there's a fairly substantial sort of front-end back-end split in terms of having people who have some minimal capacity to consume data and then transform it based on interaction, but then to whatever extent is necessary on the back-end side to be able to consume data, but it's not really based on interaction there. It's based on having a robust enough representation of what that information wants to be like on the server side in order to be able to kind of vend to all of the other clients and make sure that those things can maintain integrity. I will say that job is a lot easier than back-end engineers make it sound when you're dealing with one or two or three clients. It's not that it's an easy job, it's that it's an easy job at that scale. Back-end people tend to be working with X thousand requests a second kind of thing. And that's when it becomes challenging. We are not going to reach that, and we shouldn't aim to replicate server architectures that are sort of structured for that at this time, because you can boil the ocean.
Thank you, Brandel. Peter.
Okay, one thing I was thinking is that since a lot of what we'll be doing will be sit-down VR and XR, it would be really good if we had support for existing 6 degree of freedom input controller devices. Then we could bypass a lot of the efforts of worrying about gestures and work directly with, you grab your little puck on the side of your desk and you can move a data cursor around in a volume that goes out farther than the length of your arms and hands. So I'd really like to see that as an option.
We're not going to do that. I'm lovingly putting my hand down, because that kind of 3D has been around for many, many decades. And a huge part of the benefit of XR is the fact that your head is never completely stable. So you always have a sense of depth that you cannot replicate on a screen. Plus, there's a sense of space. And considering we have 1 year and we don't even know how to get the data into this thing, what you're talking about is
I'm just talking using the 3D puck as the means of moving a cursor around in a three-dimensional space, using the vector controller as opposed to physically moving something around. Otherwise, I'd wind up replicating the functionality of the nice tangible puck with recognition of where my hand is and have the hand be offsetting in a volume in order to create the same. It's just the tangible affordance seems, at least in my mind, make more sense if I want to be controlling a point within the volume that's going to go out farther than the length of my arm.
Sure. So to that end, Peter, like the one hard sort of demand not that I can make any here, is that the client side be rendered in 3JS. I see no reason why that should not be the case. And Space Mouse, the 3D connection device there, people have built the ability to use a Space Mouse in 3JS. It also has all of the 6 degree of freedom controllers, like the Quest 1, 2, 3 Pro controllers, for Quest, baked in. So yes. And if you want to be able to use a Space Mouse, then you can. If you want to use a desktop computer with just a mouse and a keyboard, you can. In fact, one of the neat things I discovered, this isn't in 3JS per se, but on an iPad you can use the Apple Pencil, but you can also get the tilt XY and the pressure, and portray that in 3JS as well. So there's a huge multiplicity of interactors available. Another neat thing about an iPad is that because it has its own tilt, then you can have 2 people. You can have somebody on a Vision Pro or an Oculus Quest, and also on an iPad at the same time, and have that iPad represented in their VR session with that pencil, as I said. So there's a whole range of ways that you can kind of interact with the system that's web mediated in this way, and it's made no harder by doing that. So yes, and
Yeah, I'm still putting my foot down, and the reason for it is, of course, twofold. One is time and focus. That's one reason. And the thing is, currently, I'm writing a little piece on the Vision Pro saying I'm really annoyed by the fact that they expect us to sit with our hands in our lap and twiddle our thumbs, and that's considered work. I know that's only the marketing material, Brandel. I know there are other interactions. And then, of course, in the Quest, you have laser beams. These are very limiting. But of course, in both media, the hand mapping is absolutely incredibly good. When I do use my Quest, I can take the screen, what I'm doing, and I can move it where I want. So when it comes to issues for where to reach into a bigger volume of knowledge, even within the headsets, there's going to be a lot of research of how to do that. I think that's going to be a lot of our work. So to then introduce another piece of hardware requirement for the user and to start testing that, I think within a year, and us as a community, we meet once a week. And the limited funds we have, I just don't think it's reasonable. Because, Peter, I'm like you, I will run off with things. I will look at that and then, oh my gosh, that's not where we should be. So I think it is useful. I think it is important. And that for that reason, I don't think we can do it as part of this. Does anyone else want to comment on that?
I would like to. We talk in our program, we talk in terms of stretch goals. And so if we make certain goals and we have time and the funding resources to do it, then we add these series of stretch goals in a priority. So I would like to put on the table that we put together a list of stretch goals, that if we're able to achieve the things we promised Sloan that we will do, we will go beyond that if there's time and resources. I know that from my lab's perspective, we're always interested in what is next, right? So I have been part of this grant proposal to do the things that we've been talking about during these labs, but also to support Frode. From a personal perspective, I'm interested in 4 things, one of which is how an art performance, a poetic art performance, can happen with this technology that we're building. So that's where I want to take it one day. So I have my own particular stretch goals. So I'm sure that these things that we're talking about can be put on that list and are worthy of attention, and that would not be outside of our purview.
Yeah, I can agree with that, Dene, but I'm reacting a bit stronger than Dene because I also get excited by things, and if I mentally start thinking about another interaction, I may just go nuts. So that's me being defensive. Fabien. Oh, Dene.
May I recommend something before why don't we, I don't know if we've shared the most recent proposal copy. I have no problems with sharing it. It's not proprietary. And that way everyone can see what we've promised, right? You can see what we have to deliver and the timeline of delivery. And then we could talk a little bit more, I don't know, with a knowledge base about how to proceed from there. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. Then we'll send out the proposal to you all.
I'll do that now.
Thank you. And just to say one more thing is that, you know, usually when you put grants together and you submit, there's a 6 months wait before you find out you get the grant. We had no idea that they were going to turn it around in 2 weeks. I've never seen this before. And I've done other foundational grants. So this was really fast. And I was thinking that I would have Christmas vacation to kind of wind down and relax, because I got a book project that's just getting released I've been working on. And I'm getting ready to start another book, I thought. And so I really thought I was going to have some downtime. So now I realize I'm going to be spending all of Christmas getting Andrew set up and getting everything ready for Frode's visit. So we're moving pretty fast. And I don't want too much scope creep at the beginning, especially. So if we can make these things extra, lagniappe, as we say in New Orleans.
Yeah, I got to go to America now. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, thank
Dene,
you
are
for
you
that, Dene.
from New Orleans? Sorry,
Who asked me that question?
Alan, right here.
Hi, Alan. I lived there 5 years. My father was had a guide fishing business in the Chandler Islands. And I would fly out there by seaplane and work with him on the boat on the weekends.
Wow.
And I've been with him since until he died. I mean, so I'd go out with him. I lived on in Houston, the Gulf Coast area, and then moved to New Orleans to be with him. And I did that for 5 years until I realized I couldn't drink the water. I was actually dying from the water poisoning. And so I had to leave. Makes me sad. And I would go back at least a couple of times a year for Jazz Fest and visit family. I kept a house there until, I don't know, another 10 years. I didn't get rid of the house for a long time. Finally sold it.
Sorry, I had to ask. I was born in Baton Rouge, so I know
New
Orleans pretty well.
I lived in the Faubourg Marigny at first, and then I moved uptown behind Dominican. So yeah, I love New Orleans. I don't think I'll go back because of the politics.
Yeah.
Makes me sad, but yeah, New Orleans is great. I just couldn't drink the water.
All right, continue. Sorry, thank you.
Sorry.
So for a lot more boring topic, I would personally not say no to anything as long as it's not toxic. So I would not discard any idea. And some of the craziest, weirdest ideas don't even make sense at the beginning. And then as we start to unfold, they do. And some of the most brilliant ones are actually bullshit as soon as we dig in, rather. So I would, doesn't mean I would say yes to anything, but I would still like keep it a trace somewhere. And then maybe 9 months down the line, when it's time to think if everything went well and we don't hate each other and whatnot, then yeah, what's coming next? So I think some of the stuff that seems to out there right now, either at stretch goal or lanyard or whatever to put at the bottom of the list, I would, as long as it's not toxic, keep them somewhere. And sometimes also we keep on having the same ideas, we just don't use the same words, or the what triggers it is a bit different. So having them written down without an instant no, because it sounds too, I don't know, maybe nobody sound interested in it, but there's still like a kernel of excitement in there, is useful. But in the end, we'll still have to prioritize, say, okay, that's interesting, but infeasible in that time frame, or yeah, maybe it's too niche or whatnot. But still, I would recommend to not throw away anything, at least in terms of description. Just put, let's say, not a top priority on this or that.
Yes, that's very nice to say. However, I do think we need to have some framework around this. And I think bringing in additional hardware, a trackball, is very large expansion of what this is, especially if it's considered integration into an AR or even a 2D environment. We could bring it up in a few months once things are going. Peter, please note it down as a stretch goal. That's fine. But it is literally beginning on a whole new device. So Peter, I feel it's okay for me to be very clear with you, because you've had so many brilliant ideas that I didn't understand and later did. I think I hold you in high regard. So I'm not saying this is a silly idea, not worth our consideration. I'm saying, Leon.
I would like to say, I just put in this chat that I just imagine that we're working on this project and we have these things we have to do to meet Sloan's obligations, right? But there's going to be all these great opportunities for other things that we can expand into. And so
Yep.
I can imagine that there's other little smaller grants, other grants. Sloan might fund a stage 2 grant for a list of things that we want. When I was working on the Mellon Foundation grant some years ago, I gave them the proposal and they wrote back and they said, yeah, this is great, but where do you want to go with this after? So I gave them the whole scope. Like, we go here and here and here and here. I got the grant because I had these other things in mind. Yeah, so I think if we start with that premise and we make a list of all the things as we're working, we go, oh my God, we can do this, we can do this. Let's keep that going and see where we can take this for a long-term project.
Yes, that is fair enough. But I'm also saying Peter's comment here. Another neat aspect of the 3D connection tech is that one could theoretically have multiple controllers in use at the same time, say each in one hand. But no, but not now. Okay. Look, we've been doing this for 2.5 years now, the XR thing. In the beginning, there was some coding done. After that, we've done nothing. The fact that we now have a programmer who's going to be working on a relatively reasonable budget, we still have to define what this is. And this project, and I emailed all of you just now the documentation, it is getting 2 things into XR, a library and individual documents on demand, being able to interact with them, see connections. That is it. No other hardware. You know, we're going to use the interactions that are in the systems. That means hand controls, maybe the laser pointers, maybe the controllers. But if we're going to do this, it is, yeah, I know. I see you writing, not necessarily now, just leaving integration hooks in place. I see you write that, Peter, and that's good. But we also, I mean, I see Bob Horn is back here today, which is very lovely. And Bob bugged us a year ago saying, you know, what are you guys actually doing? Oh yeah, Dene, that's fine. I know you have to leave, but just literally just another second. I think in these discussions now, in the future, we need to try to find a schedule for when are we talking about the future of text in general, and when are we talking about this? Because we do not want to shut down the kind of conversation and thinking you're doing, Peter. Absolutely not. But I do think that it needs to be more in this is the day for Alan Laidlaw's origami and Peter Wasilko's new 3D things. We shouldn't drop that. Absolutely not. But, you know, I am actually not very stressed by this project because I think we can do this. But when it opens up in such huge areas, right. How many more minutes for you, Dene, before you have to rush? Dene, you have a few more minutes to be with us, right?
I have about another 5. I've got to get boxed up. I'm taking a lot of things to campus today. This is our last week on campus, and I've got Rob coming in tomorrow.
Excellent. Okay, Leon, and then we've got to figure out what Alan's doing.
Yeah, I have actually some good news, I think. I think you might not realize this, Frode, but I see actually a reality where you and Peter walk hand in hand with a headset on, where you are using the hand controllers, Frode, and Peter is using whatever he wants to use. Because, and I think this was also the point Brandel was partially making, that, you know, if it's WebXR, it sort of comes with the package already, because these input device interfaces, they are all sort of extending each other. There's a certain hierarchy in input devices, and they all sort of use the same code. So if we get the accessibility right, then it might just work out of the box. Like if you plug in a mouse into a headset, then there is some things happening already done by the operating system and mapped to a WebXR input device. So I think we can also just keep it out of the sort of paid goals. But yeah, I guess the unpaid goals, there's lots to experiment on, which could even help each other, I think, on both sides. So I think it's a sort of illusionary separation, this bringing in new devices or not.
I think this is why we need to figure out a way to separate our conversations by a little bit of topic, because clearly you are right. There's no question about that. Just for context, I was getting some messages earlier from my programmers on Reader. They're supposed to have a new version last Monday. Obviously, they didn't. The thing they're trying to do now is in the library, if there is an editor associated with the work, show name, editor. The reason for that is in my library, because of the future of textbooks, my name comes up a lot. And I don't think my name should come up for the future of text. That's all of us. So it should be Frode Hegland, editor. That's taken them weeks to do because of this, that, and the other. So what I mean is, when I'm talking about focus, to get the interactions not to a commercially sellable, scalable thing, not at all, but to make it so when someone with the right circumstances puts the headset on, it's a really smooth experience. It's not a joke. And you guys are the real programmers. First, we do 90% of the work, then we do the other 90% of the work. I think we have to be laser focused on one part of the discussion. Maybe we start meeting 2 times a week for those who want to. For the other one, we just continue as we did before. And if we have crazy ideas, we write them down. See you later, Dene.
Well, I was going to say, I agree about the extra meetings. I'm going to be putting in an extra 5 hours a week starting January 1. But I think if we have a meeting to work on just the project and a meeting on where we're headed, and this is philosophically, spiritually, intellectually, all those things, that would be good. Because I think the other thing Frode has talked about is the book that he wants to do on what this all means as for humanity. So I think there's that part of it too. So there's going to need to be more meetings, and that's just for those of us that are interested. But yeah, I need to leave now, so I'm packing up. Bye, everybody. Thank you for your good wishes, and I love the ideas of Trim. Bye, Edgar. See you next Monday.
He can't see you, but saying bye. Bye, guys.
I can't see.
No. You can't hear her is what I meant to say. Okay, Dene's got to go. See you later, Dene. Thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, quickly. What did you want, Edgar? No, you go talk to Mama. I can't. We're in a meeting. Right. Okay, guys. Yeah, we got to keep it focused and a wide open conversation. No question about that. Now that Dene's out of the room, what is your suggestion, guys, for what I can do to make it happen that we can do this synchronization mechanism? I want that done by the end of the year. If it falls to pieces, we do it again, fine. At least we've learned something. But until it's the real the real data, it's not real. What to do?
Right. So you need to send something over some kind of web protocol, be it WebDAV or WebSockets. And I haven't written WebDAV before. Fabien, I imagine, has. I don't know whether WebDAV is sort of a real-time synchronous protocol in the same way that a socket-based connection is, Fabien, or if it can be upgraded to that. But it depends on the timing. Oh, you're too lazy. That's fair enough. I mean, I have also been mostly too lazy to do anything directly. So I've been using, a socket.io, I think, as the mechanism for these things rather than writing my own raw real-time connection. But yeah, so you just need to get stuff out of Author into a web-based sort of platform. Oh yeah, one thing I was going to say about that Space Mouse stuff. In Free.js, functionally, it looks like, I haven't used a Space Mouse before, but it looks like Free.js makes the integration of a Space Mouse trivial. On the other hand, Peter, the first contact with a 6 degree of freedom controller makes a Space Mouse completely obsolete. So yes, it's easy to make. It's completely unnecessary to make once you're an XR, because 6DoF controllers have that sort of ray-based control pretty trivially, and getting into just completely raw WebXR of hand tracking of the kind that Vision Pro has, it is pretty straightforward to just go like, oh, I have a ray that corresponds to either the explicit grep space established within the thing, or I've got an array that I use which is perpendicular to the kind of this ring here, and I use the proximity of the finger and the thumb and forefinger to indicate the sort of mouth while you're in range of motion available once you're there. So yeah. But yeah, I send stuff over the network is the answer. Send something over the network in a way that a web system has the ability to consume. Yeah.
Leon, I hope you have more specifics to flesh out on that.
Yeah, I to add to what Brandel is saying, I think a pragmatic approach would be to tell your programmer, Frode, create a small WebSocket server in a reader or author. Tell Dene's program to sort of be able to consume that. I don't know what he's going to start with, but basically a WebSocket client, and have them send a ping or a pong message back and forth, and then perhaps try to get some. You can maybe send JSON over, but at least you have the real-time connection there, which Brandel was emphasizing. And I think with WebDAV, I know it a little bit, and already from the start, a pretty heavy authentication stuff comes in. So you need to have users and all these things. So I would sort of push that back for maybe a second iteration or a bit further down the path. I would say that would be my suggestion. So just start with a WebSocket server on author reader side and a WebSocket client on the or perhaps both, a WebSocket server and client on both sides to sort of because of the Quake story, Brandel.
Okay. On the authentication and stuff, is there a way it can tell that these, through the web, not through Apple technology, that these devices are nearby, so we don't really need all that heavy authentication and user stuff?
Yes, if you're on the same network, so.
Okay, so that means we can make that a requirement. You need to be on the same network for the synchronization to take place. So that means they can discover.
Sorry, that's what I've been doing when I was away, like in Dene in Belgium. It's like it's not a safe thing. It's not to do in real life. But if you're prototyping, honestly, I think it's acceptable. Namely, that if the device are on the same network, they're the Wi-Fi, then they have a bit more rights. Let's say they're privileged, so you can give them more things to do. So yeah,
so does
that's
that
definitely.
So if we design a JSON standard, let's say, and we have something, and we have a WebDAV server on the PC type thing, and one in the headset type thing, then at least for someone to use it as a prototype, but using it with their own data, that's fine. And then later on, someone may come in and make a more secure version that has user passwords and all of that stuff. Is that right?
Yes, and if I were to give a grant and people start to re-implement the will for something unrelated, I would be pissed. So I would indeed think we need to shun authentication, or we need to remove bits that are not actually valuable. They're important, but documentation with a big warning that say not production ready, in my opinion, in that context, makes sense and is better.
Right, good. Because I'm going to pause the recording here for a second. Yeah, Fabien, sorry, you got your hand up.
Okay, I heard a couple of suggestions. First, to also echo Adam, give me the data. Like, can you give me a zip file right now with about a dozen PDFs? And and that's it. Like, can you store it on your server or GitHub or wherever? I don't care. In the sense of just starting the process, being hosted on an HTTP or HTTPS server with WebDAV or with WebSocket or whatever endpoint in order to write the data back. Like, if we want to store the process, yeah, just let's have a tiny, playful yet realistic data set, so a set of documents, and eventually we can have some JSONs in terms of either exposing the documents or additional metadata or savings or whatever. But I think if that's the game, let's say, without explicit protocol to follow in terms of what the result would be, that would be my suggestion. Like, again, regardless, is it just HTTP or HTTPS rather with not even WebSocket, but just a save/save URL where you can send whatever data you need as, let's say, a post or even a GET, whatever request. It's enough to get the process going. And then we can share with each other different URLs with different version, different implementation, etc. But that would be my recommendation, having a file in whatever format, and then we can start, let's say, to attack it, to be a little bit aggressive, to start to play with it rather. And if it's unclear, if it's the wrong format, then we iterate, we document and we chat on it. But yeah, that would be my recommendation. And ideally all this, namely, like, whenever somebody asks a question, if it's via example GitHub, then make an issue. Say, okay, it's not the right format, or I can't read this, and then yeah, we can move from.
I'm having some problems hearing you now. Oh, you finished. Okay. Yeah, I will show you two things. Number one, on the visual meta page, there's a implementation. You click on that, and then you click on AI. And then here I have an example, and I have an embedded PDF with that visual meta. It's what was shown in the video. This is something that we have to design together, or rather you have to tell me if it's wrong. So that's the first step. And then secondly, if we now do package contents here, so this is not a PDF, this is the author thing. But if you look at this, for instance, this is what Brandel deals with. So this didn't have a lot of information, but we have JSONs for that at that point, right? Adam, please.
So a couple of points on the last one. Now you had a document there with some sort of appended information where you actually modified the document. I would absolutely not love to have I have about 1,000 PDFs that are books and papers. I don't want them to be modified, my originals. So that's one thing. So the information I want to be kept on the side or in a database or in the library in some sort of way, so it doesn't kind of pollute my originals. That's one thing. The other thing is to actually get a PDF into XR. We have done that enough time, so that is the actual get the images, so to say, with page flips. That is not that hard. I've also extracted the images from it, and the text. I don't have pixel perfect text overlays yet, but I have it good enough for some text selection. So you could do basic text selection in the PDFs, but it's not. It's hard to get the font rendering right, so you match the font of the text in the PDF and so on. So that's where I am at.
Right. So when it comes to the changing of the document,
you did not raise your hand, so I have the right to cut you there. No, just for Adam, and for any time we have this, I think it's very important, and it's going to piss you off, Adam, and also Leon, and also Brandon, and also myself. Namely, we cannot just say we've done that. We need a URL for this. to ideally a live demo, or ideally a live demo plus a code plus documentation, etc. I mean, you know the drill. And if we don't, we need some kind of trace, so that when we say we've done that, it's not because I just trust you. Obviously, I know that we did do that and it was interesting, but we need to build on top of that. And even if the conclusion was like, oh, we done that and it was not good enough for XYZ reason, and if somebody else, one of us or someone else, need to build on top of this, we need to actually reference the we've done that thing.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a fine thing to say. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hi. Mark, I love you, but you're not allowed to speak for a minute because we're going to talk about a PDF thing and you're going to go off on one. I'm going to be fighting with Adam instead for a little bit. So Adam, the idea here is to keep the WebXR experience and the desktop experience very, very separate but connected. So visual meta, I think, is extremely important because it's the single most robust way you can add metadata to a document, because it's the same layer as the contents. I absolutely accept the notion that people will not want anything added to the appendix of their document. Of course, I don't agree with it, but I accept it. In my reader software, that is how it's done. You have a basic visual meta, and you also have the temporary visual meta of AI or XR information. My defense would be two things. One, the robustness, but also two, they can easily be stripped. Just cut away the last few pages and nothing is lost. However, it is really, really important in keeping the headset and the desktop separate, so that if you, for instance, wanted to write a WebDAV for your library that stores the metadata separately, that will be incredible. So your solution and mine can compete. That would be fantastic. So that is why it's so important we get this JSON thing, WebDAV thing, whatever thing done, so we can just compete, see what makes sense for people. But I'm not going to start storing things in resource forks at this point. And I don't really want to put it in a database for the application itself only, even though some of it will have to be there, because
where do we keep the library then? The library is not inside a single book; it's a totality of everything, and so there has to be some sort of data store where you that serves documents, that keeps a list of the documents where they are if we have different XR views. So there is data that does not have a home in a PDF somewhere, unless we use a special library PDF for that. But that's quite convoluted.
Yes, absolutely. The way I look at it, and I'm really grateful for this particular part of the conversation, I look at this as being, as I said, two separate things, and the funnel being really, really, really important. In my world, the library is the user's folder with PDFs. And the way that information goes to the headset is through this magic WebDAV JSON encoded stuff. And when it comes to the headset can be made by another company. They don't even need to know about each other. They just need to give each other permissions. That's so important. So in my library, the metadata is stored for each single document. So each single document has an appendix for the basics. And again, Peter, for the millionth time, I thank you. There will be one single page appendix for one AI search for names, one single appendix for XR positions in space of elements, and so on. So there can be easily 20 pages of appendices. Unless you print them out, you probably will never notice. But that is why if someone decides they hate Reader, but let's say through a dream, visual meta becomes the norm, they can put it in someone else's system and have lost no data. I really think that the data needs to be where it is. I think it needs to be owned. So that is, yeah, sorry, that's my attempt at an answer. Is that okay, or are we ready for Ellen? I'm very happy to go a bit further, Adam, if you have further on this.
Yeah, I don't think that's a viable path forward for many types of information that we want to store about library collections and so on. They don't necessarily live inside a PDF. They don't have a natural place there. We will have rooms and spaces defined, and that's data that has to live somewhere. I believe, and that needs to be. We must find a way to store that in a sort of a database or file, but it has to be stored somewhere, and I don't think every PDF can know about the whole library. That's unreasonable, and more.
I completely agree with you, and I've been fighting this internally for a long time. Where how do you refer to a book in that library? And one way is to store it as a PDF reference. That's a bit pathetic, but that is one way of doing it. Another way of doing exactly what you're saying, having a database, I don't mind that at all, right? What I'm talking about here is a library of PDFs for an academic user. How we refer to other media, I'm extremely happy to have that discussion. And I'm absolutely not saying it has to be shoehorned in the same way, but I think the use case here is primarily academic PDFs viewed on desktop, viewed on a headset. What's Leon saying? Oh,
He's
okay,
just gotta go.
all right, yeah, that's fair enough. So Adam, it is a known problem. It's an accepted problem. We have to decide whether we're going to tackle that this year or whether we're just going to say academic documents, nothing else for now. If you want to tackle it, I'm extremely happy to be part of that dialogue, though.
But you want a library, so where is that library stored? It said, I think it's a more, this problem has to do with your project. If you want a library and some sort of organization of that library and not just a list from your folder,
Can I butt in here?
Yeah.
Sorry. I gotta say this. It's not gonna be phrased very well. It does lead to some other stuff, but it deals directly with this. I would request sincerely, Frode, that you think about what is the priority here. And I totally get that an app or an interaction doesn't feel real unless it's with your own data. I get that. But I also think that as evidenced by the last 30 minutes or an hour, seriously distracts what it is I think that's at the core of what you're trying to do. And so I would really think about, even think about the creative selection in that book and the things that King Cosiendo was not concerned with specifically in order to just get at how to type, in this little tiny device, right? What do we want to be focused on? And when I think about the grant and what I think about the nature of our conversations for the last few years, it's not about libraries. It's not about it's about how can we work effectively in this space? How can we change our own paradigms, right? Now, I think channeling in live data is excellent as soon as possible, but I really think it would be, well, when you do prototypes like this, when you do spikes and sprints like this, you have to be laser focused on what is truly the most important thing and be able to sacrifice sometimes the most, things that the babies, right? So to add to that a little bit more, I think that from anyone coming off the street and looking at this project, the first question is, why would I put on a helmet to look at a PDF? Right? What can this new interface do that is 10x beyond, that will get me past the threshold or the barrier of putting a helmet on and then accessing a thing that is otherwise, always there? The experience, the payoff has got to be so remarkably different, I would argue, that it's like the only way I can think is through this other medium, right? I don't think we're going to be able to get there if we're thinking in terms of libraries and storage, and even in terms of lists, right? We have to really think quite a bit differently, which happens kind of naturally in our, weekly cadence conversations. But for a lot of products, that goes away immediately the minute you have to start being practical. The advantage of this grant is that it doesn't have to be practical, right? It doesn't have to make money. It doesn't have to be industry ready and find product market fit. And that's pretty fantastic. So I have other stuff to say, but I'll stop there.
Okay, so directly back on that. I do think the library is key. It will be nice to get a PDF in. I really would like that, especially to read with many pages or a whole screen, like Fabien said, a whole wall. I would like to be able to extract images, but I really think, and this is very much back to one of Brandel's very, very earliest things he showed us, you can have literally 1 million items in VR, and it becomes manageable. So that's why I think it's the library, because if you imagine someone like Mark, who also has a lot of documents, let's say Mark, forget Adam for a second because he has so many others, just for the sake of this particular argument. Mark says, okay, I want to try this system. And he opens into this new library software, everything he has, and it does the basic metadata, adding to it, author, title, date, that kind of stuff. Then he has an opportunity to go through the process we discussed earlier of adding further metadata, which suits him. Might be names, might be something else. I really think that as long as we develop, and I think we can do it relatively quickly, some sort of solution just to take that data and just shoot it into the headset, the beginning of working with huge volumes of text and see how they connect. Just literally imagine having, Washington State as one of the things on the wall, have the map of America, for instance, and then, have lots of different things in the room. It becomes manageable. I think we can see relationships we can't otherwise. And the reason I'm selling this aspect of it is quite literally the use case of in a year, or maybe at the hypertext conference, we put someone's headset on, and yeah, they may start with our data because, we're not going to make them do that thing. But it is data from a shared field. And there's like literally, they say my mind is literally expanded. And I'm using the term literally in all the ways. I can now literally see connections I could never see in any other medium because the entire space is my workspace. And that's it. I think that is the entire goal. Do we want to have other media than PDF? Of course we do, Adam. Crucial, but not for this first. I'm talking about, for instance, a case study could be the hypertext conference papers that Marcus worked on, because he's also made sure the metadata is clean. Because in our field, that is known work that a lot of people would have anyway. And then they can be shown how to later on have their own specific versions of it. But I think the library will be more important than any other interaction we can. And I do think that with the enthusiasm and intelligence of you guys, we're going to find crazy ways to build the interactions there. Brandel had his crazy carpet. Adam's had many, many ways of curving text. Once it's there, okay, so I realized I've changed what I'm saying. I'm now not saying it has to be the end user's document, but I'm saying at least for the demo, it has to be in the end user's field. Right? That's at least a basic beginning. It just cannot be generic. I think we agree on that. Yes, Peter, you've been very patient. Please go.
Yeah, one thing I think we need to have is some sort of a globally unique identifier that we can stick in our documents so that we can use visual meta to indicate what alternate formats of the same document are and deal with the whole versioning issue, and also have the ability to have some sort of standoff visual meta for instances where the underlying PDF is copyrighted. We do not have the right to alter the underlying PDF, but we still want to associate annotations with it. So some mechanism there to be able to bind maybe just an automatically generated hash of an arbitrary PDF that we cannot touch to a hunk of visual meta in a standalone file, so that we'll be able to work with it in our system, even though we don't have the rights to play with the original document.
I think that for this, at least, if you have the document, you have rights to do whatever you want with it because it's for personal use. However, this goes into what Adam was talking about, things that aren't PDFs. So if you have a PDF that is on someone else's server that you don't have the right to download, or if you're talking about a book, we need a solution for that at some point. Yes. Adam?
And also paywall documents where unless somebody pays, they can't get a hold of the original PDF, and we still want to apply visual meta to establish links and definitions and concepts and do our nice little
Right.
map view.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Adam, and then I think Alan took his hand up after Adam was getting ready to speak. I don't know.
What I was proposing was not to bring other kinds of media in there, but I like that, of course. I like images and videos and sounds and other things. But what I was talking about was the library. If we have a library, that there has to be some sort of representation, some sort of structure to that library. At least visually, graphically, how is it sorted? How have you organized it? And that will be very different from a folder structure. So that information needs to be somewhere so at some point we have to decide where that data live and how it lives. For some people, it's not unimportant, but I think it's quite important here. And that can't be inside a PDF, I think so.
I understand you better now. This is the basic library that I'm experimenting with in Reader, but there are interactions there, such as these guys on top are pinned, some are hidden. So there is absolutely information about the structure of the library. Thank you for that. I'll keep thinking, and Alan, please go ahead.
So when I think about XR and what it could do that's truly different, I think about something like this, right? This is a knowledge graph in curved space, if you will, right? It's a knot, but these are the connections that would normally just be lines that are overlapping. But here, of course, it looks like a confusing mess when it's on a flat screen, but when you're actually looking through it, you can see, hey, I see how these things connect, right? This may not be the greatest example, but it's something I threw together just for the hell of it, right? And I would like, I think what's exciting about XR and the sort of the screenlessness illusion, because of course it is a screen, is this paradigm to get outside the paradigm of lists and trees and 2D thinking, and see if like this kind of thing is intuitive to your Einsteins and your Poincares, right? Poincaré. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This is how they think, right? Yeah, sorry.
Did you see your transcript? That's brilliant.
This is they're comfortable with sort of understanding space as being curved and surfaces and topologies, right? And right now it's in the domain of esoteric math, right? But I think it's very likely that this stuff becomes pretty core to how we think, because we have a track record of that. Just 200 years ago, there are concepts that were arcane mathematics, and now they're part of our everyday life. So like, I want to be on the race to getting here with this strange undergirding, but yeah, I don't know if that's part of the project, but I think there's a lot more that can be done to understand our how ideas link together. And this isn't just entities and nodes so much. I mean, it's a whole different topic to discuss what these dots actually are. But yeah, there we go.
This is exactly where I want to spend our time. Getting the data in the XR space and building stuff like that. Like Ted Nelson's Zigzag as well is very complementary what you're saying. Absolutely, super important. Peter.
Okay. I think it would be really helpful if we had an external file format. I love that sidecar file idea for the visual meta, and I really would like to have the equivalent of a font DA mover, so that I could take a piece of visual meta from one file as an ordinary end user who isn't familiar with the grammar and just drag that bit into another file and let the system worry about the JSON formatting and the BibTeX formatting for me. Otherwise, only programmers are going to want to play with the guts of the visual meta files. And the font DA mover model is just beautiful because you can have two libraries. I could have a copy of Frode's library. I could have a copy of Fabien's library. I could decide that I want to pluck this reference from Fabien's, this reference from Frode's, stick them together in my library. And that model of just being able to click on something in one column and click a button pointing to the other column to move it over, to transfer that data, and let the system handle the formatting and insulate the user from having to deal with it. Otherwise, people are going to look at visual meta and it'll be the reaction of, oh my God, that's code. My brain shuts down when I see code.
Peter, the end user is never expected to look at the visual meta other than if they ever want to check something. Completely agree with what you're saying there. Fabien.
Yeah, I put back a link that I shared a couple of weeks ago, or even I think I made a quick demonstration on. Yeah, I did make a very small demonstration with a PDF that had, I think, just the title on a 3D page based on Calibre Web. So Calibre is a popular tool on Linux to manage documents so that you can convert EPUB, PDF, HTML, whatever, things that are usually books-like, but it doesn't really matter so much. So we can say documents, taking a few shortcuts. And it shows them only in 2D, which is the expected way, let's say, to look at the library on a computer. And I think what I was trying to evoke a couple of weeks ago during the demo is indeed what does the library in 3D and eventually in XR look like and how it could be manipulated. So I think, let's say, we can imagine that Reader or whatever software uses to manipulate the documents doesn't just provide a web server, being WebDAV or WebSocket or HTTPS with whatever endpoint, but provides Calibre Web, but a modified version of it so that the bookshelf is a WebXR page with the content being manipulable. It's very hackish, definitely not the most optimal solution, but I think in terms of going from the discussion we're having now to manipulating documents that are kind of on a shelf, that's the most direct pathway I can imagine right now.
Right. So obviously we're over time. Yes, lots of really important things came up. I think maybe, Adam, your statement that a library is a thing, it's not just a list of documents, is something really too important to reflect on. So does anyone feel like having another meeting soon to just talk about getting a few sample documents and then just developing a format for it? Or should we do that offline, or is nobody interested, or how should we deal with that? I think it's something we can get done relatively quickly, and that includes the Adam, library document or whatever we think it should be. Adam.
I would encourage us all to think of user interface or what we do first and work backwards. I feel today we have started a bit in the opposite end to decide on the technologies and work forward, and that is a recipe for catastrophe, I think, or it has many potential pitfalls. So I would encourage everyone to do napkin sketches or do hand small speeches with illustrated with gestures, whatever you feel comfortable with, but actually design what you would like to have, whether it's picking books from your library or how your ideal way of annotating or pulling a book apart or whatever it is, how you would like to do that, because that is the opportunity we have here. Usually you shouldn't rip books apart, but now in XR we have a great way of actually doing exactly that, throwing pages away or duplicating pages or cutting out things, and so we have ample opportunity for that, and I would start there to get something really interesting, or
I absolutely fundamentally agree, which is why I've been asking for the last year and a half for exactly that. I think this is also good inspiration for us to do that. I think that in addition, we need to really just define, because all we're talking about, let's say, okay, I'm going to say we've decided we're going to use JSON for the library. And if anybody disagrees, fine. But let's say we have decided on JSON. All we need to do is define the basic structure of the basic metadata and extended metadata. Visual meta, which is based on BibTeX, maps onto that quite well, right? And once we've done that, then we're beginning to have a reality for this. And in terms of the user interactions, ignoring the user interaction with the actual stuff once we're in, because that should be 99% of this. You know, I just want the 1% basic. I want you to be able to use a library type software by whatever vendor, close the laptop, or rather close it a little bit, put your headset on, enter the environment, which is probably going to be a local URL or something, or maybe it's launched from an app, and you have access to that. That's when we can really start to do what you're talking about. Really, whether it's on napkin or not, it's a reality that it's in a way obscene, isn't easy and ready, but it really is also exciting, and it shows how immature VR is for work.
But Frode, do I sense a slight reluctance to do the kind of imaginary work first here? Or is
No,
it hard, or what is it that stopped? Because we need to know what to do before we start to do it.
What you detect is a very strong frustration, because I have written many scenarios and I've shared them in the journal and they're in the book. And in terms of feedback from the community, there has been very, very little. And that's absolutely fine because of the time we work on, right? The rhythm that we have. I don't expect us to all comment on those things. If people want to do that now, that is great. Because for one thing, if you get to a certain level, let's put it in the book. I'm really, really excited by that. But I am concerned in the experience of our community of asking to think of scenarios. It doesn't really happen. And even whether we do think of scenarios or not, at some point, we need to have them actually be interactive. We need to actually go in there, Fabien. So we just had a little bit of a discussion on to what degree to look at scenarios versus synchronizations, what corpus to look at. And we're thinking maybe using the hypertext ACM documents as an initial work corpus. Fabien, please.
Yeah, I think, for example, using the hypertext corpus is interesting. Like, I legitimately want to know more about it. So for me, that's very good. Some of it, some metadata might be enriched or whatever. Fine. What I think we need on top of that is also a user, and a user who is not as passionate as we are, might not be as knowledgeable as we are, probably more knowledgeable about other topics, maybe about hypertext itself. Honest, namely that when we go wherever in crazy land, and it's not efficient regarding their workflow, to tell us, basically. And I would argue with some at least minimal experience of XR, so that they were not like straight up saying, oh, a headset, I don't want to touch this thing. But I think that would help us be pulled in the right direction. And then they probably would tell us if it matters, if it's this or that format, this or that backend, or the implementation, etc. And for us, then focusing on value, basically.
Just a brief comment before I hand it over to Peter there. The thing you saw earlier today about extracting names from a PDF, I think this is a really important part of the process, because a PDF in itself is quite dumb, obviously. So I'm very happy to use Mark Anderson's vast corpus. But you said augmented or not. If we agree on the basic formatting through which that would be communicated, you know, then we really have something, because to only have documents with the title, date, and author name in XR is really limited. It's defined what's inside the documents. And that can be done in all kinds of AI ways, and it can be done in simpler ways. So yeah, I see all kinds of head. Peter.
Okay. From a technical perspective, I think we want to factor out the formatting of the data from our goal of being able to transmit the data from the headset to the laptop and back. So what I recommend is that the data packet being transferred consists of an identifier for a grammar and simple string with an intent for why we're sending this packet over, and then a block of text. Then the receiving system can consult the appropriate grammar and apply that parser to the block of text. And of course, from the intent string, it knows why it was handed that data to work with in the first place. That way, we're free to swap out arbitrary grammar specifications over time, and it has no impact on the data transfer mechanism. All the data transfer mechanism sending is a grammar name, an intent and what to do with the data block coming in the grammar, and the raw block of data. And that basically will let whoever is working on the data transfer be operating independently of whoever is working on our initial minimal grammar specification and add-on specifications over time.
In
But
this
Peter,
context,
you have to acknowledge that even theater teachers like me or should be able to work this protocol, even though I'm very technical. So having kind of different grammars and parsable grammars is kind of, we're leaning into computer science territory now. And
well, what you'd see as an end user might be this block is going to be the names grammar, and our intent is to merge it on your side, and then we have the names, which could be JSON, or it could be YAML, or it could be a markdown list, depending upon what the data format is. But the nice thing is it sort of factors that decision out. You wouldn't be thinking of it as the end user, of course, because the system would be generating whatever the appropriate format is. But again, it lets the protocol would be living independent of what the formatting of the underlying data is. It would just be seen as a big hunk of text, the name of a grammar, and then the software on either side could be using libraries and whatever programming language it was using to be parsing the text based upon that grammar. The grammar specification itself, a parsing expression grammar, absolutely makes the most sense, because that gives us an unambiguous single parse of whatever data we're working with. And that kind of a grammar formalism was designed to work with artificial languages as opposed to natural languages, so you don't have the ambiguity. Parsing expression grammars are based upon ordered choice. There's an ordered choice operator, and whichever matches first win.
Peter, way over time. We just have PDFs, right? That is the real world scenario. See you later, Alan. The basic data here has to be, the grant was given for an academic audience. And we don't have access to the raw data. So the PDFs are going to be badly parsed and all kinds of stuff. There's going to be issues. So what we're talking about really is the two things, the document interactions with the document, which we haven't really discussed today, and how to do and how to get this stuff across. So I've decided to agree with all of you. I'm going to pause really focusing on the transmission mechanism. And we're going to start with one corpus, and we're going to have that marked up as well as we can by marked by mark, right? And then we can start to look at how to deal with that, because everybody
Mark
who's
volunteered.
ever done...
Did you volunteer now, Mark? Frode volunteer you.
I'll volunteer for designing grammars.
Best kind of volunteering.
Mark's already done it mostly. So all I'm saying is there have been myriad ideas for doing clouds and stuff in XR. It's probably the most obvious solution for it, with lots of data points and all of that. So what we're really looking at here that I think is useful is the basic metadata of a document, and on the client side, on the computer side, desktop side, for the user to decide which of the internal data is relevant. One way of being is just using AI to extract all names in the document, just as an example. And how we transmit that into the XR space is, of course, part of our issue. Because then we can really start having a really rich multidimensional environment that is custom, so that Peter may not want to have the same kind of things out of the document as Mark, even though they're the same documents. And if we get to the stretch goal, to use that terminology, of being able to highlight or annotate any of these documents when you open them and have that be back on your computer, insanely amazing. But
when you're saying author names, do you have a kind of a visual or an interaction that you that pops up to you when you say that? So if you have a PDF or a couple of PDFs with lots of names floating around, whoa, or what would that be or look like to you?
I'll answer that with some principles. The principle is user interaction choice of selecting and choosing what to see and what to hide. So that means that you go through the processes to analyze the document one by one or in bulk. And let's say you extract a lot of place names. You may then, as the user in XR, have a map on the wall. And you can have little dots on that map. You may also choose to have portraits of any people mentioned on another wall. And this is where I think it gets fun and interesting, that because these are known to be something, because when you extract names, it'll tell you this is a name rather than another kind of value. And because you have an opportunity to validate whether you agree with this or not, and of course there can be mistakes, like with anything, we can start building really interesting interactions. So you can, look on the map, have it over here, and then you can maybe have a time slider. You can see, don't show me this and show me that. All these fun things can then begin to happen. Mark, please.
I was just really going to say that the current data that I pushed out hasn't got author data in there. I do actually have, I think it's like, I've got something like 2.8K authors mapping onto 2.6, is it 2.6K, something like that, actually discrete humans, because people use name variants and people change their names and even gender assignments, all sorts of things. So all these things we have to put in there. I didn't. The only reason the author stuff wasn't out there is I'm not clever enough to know how to. I didn't know how it would usefully seam in. So what I'm very happy to do is perhaps correspond with Adam and Peter, just sort of say, well, look, this is the sort of data I've got. How meaningfully can I, for instance, connect it to what's there? I mean, essentially, the database I've got has a 10-digit GUID figure. So, I mean, everything at the end of the day has got a number attached to it, and we can lash it up how we want. But I'm totally open, and within what I can manage out in terms of getting things out of Tinderbox, I'm very happy to try and mash it up in whatever format is useful. The names are just the names as extracted from the original papers. So in the early days, there are people who just have initials, and then their names are lost to us in time. By and large, we have more name information for people in the current time.
So what we talked about when we weren't recorded was a specific corpus of academic documents and how much we could take them into this. So obviously this is a discussion, and definitely we want to go further with this. And we still need a way for someone to have their own document to put it into this XR thing. But I really found last week two breakthroughs. One was the laptop software can be a server to whatever XR needs, but the other one was this act of manually using AI analysis of a document to extract what I, as a user, want and have that be available. I think that is absolutely crucial, because in this amazing environment, if it's just what Mark has, with due respect, because he's only taking what ACM gives him, it's not enough. The keywords are rubbish, including my own keywords for ACM. What do you write? But if it's extracted, the kind of stuff, then we can start playing with the interactions. So I could very easily see, Dene and I, of course, very involved in the ACM community. I can imagine when we present our work at ACM next year, that it'll be presented here, and it'll have at least this current year's ACM documents in full. That's very reasonable. And we will have done these interactions from one user's point of view. and then show this is how they can do it themselves. So that could be a good starting corpus.
Another work going on probably means that we may end up having sort of basically cleaned, as in no typos or misdetections, OCR plain text of the documents, which is, I think, exciting for what we're doing, because that makes it a lot easier for us to probably do some of the interesting experiments we want to do. It's an accidental byproduct, but I'm working on that.
That's a really key thing, and I have to go into pause for a second on recording. But we need to wind down the conversation. I'm really, really grateful for your time today. And there's been real, what is it politicians say when they disagree? There's been frank and honest exchanges of views.
I've got a dash. Before I do, there is a link in the sidebar there to my Hypertext 2022 paper that I only got access to in HTML form whilst going through the ACM TAP system. So you can't publicly do this, but I had the presence of mind to grab a copy. I'll put it up there. So again, it's just an example of what we might be getting to. Anyway, I'm afraid I've got a hard cut, so I must dash. Thanks, everyone. I'm sorry I was late.
See you later, Mark. Adam, for your earlier question, of course, the video is going up. The chat always also goes into a blog. So that will be available on future text.
Okay.
If you don't find it, I'll try to email you. If you don't, I'll point you to it again. And have a good week. We will think about things until next week. Let's see how far we get.
Yep.
All right.
Have a good
Bye,
week. Great
guys.
session.
You too. Bye.